On Friday night, the Los Angeles Clippers were able to eliminate the Utah Jazz in Game 6 in order to advance to their first Western Conference Finals. They did this despite not having Kawhi Leonard on the roster, and they did this on the back of some masterful game planning from Tyronn Lue. And the moment this happened, it put pressure on Doc Rivers and the Philadelphia 76ers because this officially became a legacy game for Doc Rivers. A man who has blown 5 leads in the past 2 postseasons. The pressure for Doc Rivers to win in this scenario has never been greater. And that's before we get to the pressure that's going to be on other members of the Philadelphia 76ers. So what's going on, guys? Your boy Mike here. Real quick before we get to the content, I want to let you guys know that I'm giving away a jersey of your choice to any subscriber that turns on our notifications on this channel. All you have to do is let me know in the comment section down below what jersey you want. And now that we get all that out of the way, cue the intro. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? Some of you guys might be wondering why didn't I make a video on when the Los Angeles Clippers were able to make it past the Utah Jazz, or when the Brooklyn Nets lost to the Milwaukee Bucks yesterday. And to just keep it short and brief, because I know a decent amount of you guys aren't here for me, it mainly had to do with personal health reasons. I explained it in a lengthy Twitter post, but now that we got all that out of the way, let's get to what you guys are actually here for. This series between the Philadelphia 76ers and the Atlanta Hawks has been one of the most back and forth series that I think I've ever seen. We've seen moments where the Philadelphia 76ers were playing masterful basketball, and that typically would occur in the first half of play. And then you would see them completely disappear in the second half. For example, there was a game where Joel Embiid was perfect from the field in the first half, only to completely disappear in the second half. And speaking of disappearing acts, could we talk about Ben Simmons, a man that has been completely trolled for his inability to be a factor in this series at all whatsoever. In Game 4, Ben Simmons only shot 1 field goal and was 1 for 1 from the field. As a matter of fact, in Game 5 and 6, he only shot 1 field goal, but he was 0 for 1 from the field. And it's almost as if the Atlanta Hawks understood completely that if they were to slow down the game, then they could completely take Ben Simmons out of the equation for the entirety of this series. The result being a lot of NBA fans are left there wondering who's to blame for the fact that the Sixers have been taken to 7 games by the Atlanta Hawks. And this is no offense to the Atlanta Hawks, because I think Trae Young's amazing, and I think the way this team has been constructed is remarkable. But when you have a team that's filled with Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons, Tobias Harris, and multiple good shooters around them, with a head coach that has championship experience, well, you'd expect them to easily be able to make quick work out of a young team in the Atlanta Hawks that is currently playing with an interim head coach in Nate McMillan. Entering this game, Ben Simmons has been averaging 10.7 points per game, 7.8 assists per game, 6 rebounds per game, shooting 61% from the field and 32% from free throw in the entire series. And if the Philadelphia 76ers were to lose this game against the Atlanta Hawks, much like when the Utah Jazz lost that game to the Los Angeles Clippers, well, there could be franchise-altering ramifications in this instance. When the Los Angeles Clippers beat the Utah Jazz, it was mainly because Rudy Gobert wasn't in a position where he was comfortable closing out on Terrence Mann. So as a result, Terrence Mann got all the wide open looks he wanted. This isn't necessarily Rudy Gobert's fault. This is because the Jazz were overly dependent on a traditional center, and he got exposed for it. In the case of Ben Simmons, something that I've been saying since the moment he came into the league is if this man didn't develop a jump shot of some sort, then he will be exposed at some point in his career. And while in the regular season, he looked like a defensive savant that thrived in transition, he was absolutely exposed during times where he had to play in a half-court set. And it seemed like year after year, he would never improve. So if the Philadelphia 76ers lose this game, what is to become of Ben Simmons? I don't see him returning to the Philadelphia 76ers if they lose lose because Daryl Morey will probably look at Ben Simmons and say analytically, he is the reason why we're losing these games. So with that being said, let's jump straight into the game. So the first half would be extremely slow and it would be filled with, well, fairly inefficient scoring on both sides. A good example of this is in the first half, Trae Young only scored 9 points off of 1 of 12 shooting from the field. Tobias Harris went 3 for 10 from the field and brought in 10 points for the Sixers, and you did get efficient scoring on both sides from Kevin Huerter, John Collins, and Joel Embiid, with Kevin Huerter going 5 for 8 from the field for 12 points in the first half, John Collins going 4 of 5 from the field for 10 points, and Joel Embiid going 5 of 8 for 15 points. And Ben Simmons only attempted 2 field goals and went 1 for 2 from the field, but he did affect the game in other ways. This game would go down to the wire all the way to the fourth quarter, and for the most part, the same exact storylines would persist throughout the entirety of the game. One being the fact that Trae Young was shooting absolutely abysmally from the field, shooting under 20% at some point, with his only means of really being able to score being foul baiting, but fortunately for him, he was able to affect the game through his ability to dish out assists, whereas Ben Simmons was going through something very similar, although it seemed almost as if he was reluctant to even attempt to shoot the basketball, being almost too passive in my opinion. As a matter of fact, in the middle of the fourth quarter, he was literally only 2 for 4 from the field for 4 points, mimicking the exact same type of gameplay that we saw from him in Game 6. Eventually, the Philadelphia 76ers would lose to the Atlanta Hawks, despite a 30-point double-double from Joel Embiid off of 52% shooting, and Tobias Harris pouring in 24 points as well off of 35% shooting from the field. There are multiple things that we could take away from this, but the first thing is we got to give the Atlanta Hawks their props, because this is the first time that we could actually go out to say that this isn't a team that's solely carried by Trae Young. His teammates stepped up and carried the load when his jump shot wasn't falling, especially Kevin Huerter, who was scorching hot 56% from the field for 27 points on the game. John Collins was amazing, going for 14 points and 16 rebounds and only missing 1 shot from the field. And Danilo Gallinari also was amazing, making 46% of his shots for 17 points on the game. Now on to the Philadelphia 76ers, because originally, you brought in Doc Rivers and you fired Brett Brown thinking that coaching was the problem here. And ultimately, you bring in a brand new coach, you bring in a brand new general manager, which, by the way, Daryl Morey, you follow me on Twitter. In the off chance you're watching this, he's probably not watching this, but in the off chance that he is, I think this roster was constructed beautifully. Getting out of Al Horford's disgusting contract and flipping that for a shooter in Danny Green was brilliant. Poaching Seth Curry, that was playing on a below market contract, to add additional shooting and scoring, that literally won them Game 6. And the philosophy of trying to make it work between Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid and try to help Ben Simmons improve on the defensive end was a very good plan coming into the season. I think the issue isn't necessarily to do with the coaching. Well, I guess it kind of has to do with the coaching, but I think it's more to do with the pieces. You see, just as how when Rudy Gobert was in for the Utah Jazz late in that Game 6 versus the Los Angeles Clippers and was getting exposed by Terrence Mann, well, once the regular season ends, Ben Simmons gets absolutely exposed in the playoffs, and Doc Rivers doesn't really have a way to mask that exposition, especially in a game where I stated at the beginning of this video, Ben Simmons' entire legacy and the fate of his future with the Philadelphia 76ers is on the line. He showed up with 5 points off of 2 of 4 from the field. Yes, he dished 13 assists and 8 rebounds, but it's way too easy to completely shut him out and make him a non-factor in the half-court set. Yeah, he thrives in transition, but it's way too easy to shut down Ben Simmons. And now that it's been 5 years officially that Ben Simmons has been in the NBA with absolutely no offensive development whatsoever, the 76ers have one of 2 options. One of these options is a little bit more ambitious than the other, but I'm still going to put it out there just so we could separate ourselves from typical trade Ben Simmons jargon. You see, you could trade trade Ben Simmons, and I have no idea what the market for Ben Simmons will be after what happened to him during this playoff run. You see, if they were to trade him for James Harden earlier this year, that would have been amazing, and I think the Houston Rockets would have taken that back then. But now, in this scenario, when he's been exposed this much as a non-factor in the half-court set and offenses in the NBA playoffs, it might be more difficult to get good value in return for a former #1 overall pick. So another option would be to, and I'm sure there are other coaches like this, but this is the guy that pops to my mind the most. Apparently, Fred Vinson, the assistant coach of the New Orleans Pelicans, who is credited for being able to completely change the way Lonzo Ball shot at basketball, is taking head coaching interviews. I would do everything in my power to get that man on this roster to at least work with Ben Simmons or get Ben Simmons some sort of shooting coach, because this stagnation from Ben Simmons has gone way too far, and we could all agree that there's no way that the Philadelphia 76ers will go anywhere until Ben Simmons will be able to develop some sort of offensive repertoire. As for the Atlanta Hawks, this is pretty awesome. I'm really happy to see them go this far, especially this young of a team. I really think they actually have an opportunity to surprise the Milwaukee Bucks. Hopefully, if their shots are falling, I think they could surprise the Milwaukee Bucks. But this team is significantly better than most of us imagined. So let me know in the comment section down below. What do you guys think about what you just saw? Make sure you leave a like, subscribe, and turn on our notifications, because these videos are pretty hard to make so quickly, man. Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.